Thank you, and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Melissa Katz, and I'm running for state auditor. I believe that Oklahomans deserve a government that operates in the daylight with transparency, accountability, and worthy of your trust. I currently work at the state auditor's office, and I am the director of the Performance Audit Division. I have been with the agency for 25 years now, and that means the majority of my professional career has been solely devoted to protecting taxpayer dollars. Public officials have a fiduciary responsibility to citizens, and government auditors are the watchdogs. We keep a close eye on the state's finances to make sure taxpayers stay informed about what is happening to their money at every level of government. The state auditor's office is an independent agency, which means we are not bound to the legislature or the governor. We are accountable directly to the Oklahomans. Our independence is a powerful safeguard. It helps ensure that our audits remain objective. And that is important because taxpayers have a right to know whether officials are using their money in a legal, responsible, and ethical manner. Citizens pay taxes to receive benefits of good government. And I am all for government efficiency, but I'm also committed to ensuring that the services paid for by taxpayers are delivered as promised. Now, the auditor's office is, we conduct the audits by statute and constitutional provisions at state and local levels. We conduct all sorts of audits, from reviews of routine operations, which evaluate internal controls and look for efficiencies in state agencies, and also investigative audits that are designed to uncover fraud. Now, I spent the first 11 years of my career in the state agency audit division. Now, that division produces the ACFR and the single audit. The ACFR is the state's financial statements, and the single audit is the audit that reviews the billions of dollars that flow through state agencies within Oklahoma. And it's critical that our state follows the federal guidelines when spending that money, because if it doesn't, the U.S. Treasury can ask us to repay that money. Now, as previously mentioned, I am currently the director of the Performance Audit Division, a position I have held for about 8 years now. We conduct routine operational audits on approximately 85 agencies every 2 years. And performance audits that we conduct are by request only. If I get a request to do a performance audit, it comes from the governor or an agency director. Now, these audits help find better efficiencies within the operations of the state agencies. One of the most important performance audits that I've led goes back to 2019. It was when our office released a one-of-its-kind audit of the Medicaid eligibility. Now, what we found in that audit is that the Oklahoma Health Care Authority, which administers that program, was failing to verify income for approximately 75% of the MAGI recipients. Now, again, that was in 1 year alone. So in 2019, we projected $1.6 billion was paid on behalf of Medicaid recipients whose eligibility had never been verified. So what happened, you might ask? Applicants self-report their income when applying for services. Their income is later verified using income data from the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, OESC. And part of the problem is OESC was the only source of data that the healthcare authority was using. And because it is the only source, the agency did not have access to verify income for those that are self-employed, for those that are working for out-of-state employers, and those employees that work for the federal government. So for these groups, the agency relied solely on self-attestation. There was no verification. Now, I believe that Medicaid provides a crucial service, but the program has limited resources. We have to make sure the money is getting to those who need it the most. Because did you know that over 26% of Oklahoma's population is on Medicaid? That's 1 out of every 4 Oklahomans. The program was designed to protect the neediest Oklahomans However, the rapid expansion is putting a long-term solvency into jeopardy. Now is the time to tighten the controls, to make sure that those who are eligible are receiving the benefits. Now, after our audit, the Healthcare Authority, to its credit, tried to tighten internal controls and make processes, improvements to processes in the income verification. But then COVID hit, and the federal government banned the agency from putting any reforms into place. Now, the effect of all this is that Medicaid is not necessarily serving its purpose, which is to provide health care for the neediest of Oklahomans. In FY19, the Healthcare Authority received $4.7 billion in a combined of state and federal dollars. But just to show you how rapidly the program is growing, in 2024, the agency's budget was over $10.5 billion. Now, this program is largely funded by the federal government under the Affordable Care Act, but that support is shrinking. Congress is considering cutting the program up to $900 billion over the next 10 years. Now, when that happens, the state's portion of Medicaid's costs will rise, and we could see it approaching 40%. And that's a burden that our state cannot afford. So now is the time to enforce existing income requirements. There is no assurance that the program will continue to be available, or there is no assurance that the program will continue to be available for those who need it most. Now, to talk about some special investigations that I've also led or worked on myself, one of those in particular that you may remember back in 2018 was of the Oklahoma Department of Health, where we identified the agency did not need a supplemental appropriation of $30 million. And then again in 2021, another audit of the Department of Health, we identified that over $5 million was spent on PPE supplies that were never received. Some current audits that are in place that we are working on is the Department of Tourism. You may remember a controversy surrounding the agency's contract with Swadley's Barbecue. Now, the state paid Swadley's millions to remodel 6 state parks. And in April of 22, the state abruptly canceled Swadley's contract, citing possible fraudulent activity, highly questionable billing, invoicing, and record-keeping practices. Now, the state ultimately sued Swadley's, claiming the restaurant overbilled and abused public funds. Brent Swadley, however, countersued the state, claiming he had been underpaid for upfront money he had put into the parks. Now, just over a year ago, the Oklahoma Multi-County Grand Jury indicted Swadley and 2 of his employees for conspiracy to defraud the state. Now, our investigation is complete, and in cooperation with the AG's office, we hope to release the findings in the coming months. Another audit that we're currently involved in is the Department of Mental Health. Now, a little over a month ago, we released part 1 of that audit, and we identified that the agency needed nearly $29 million to make it through the end of the fiscal year. We will continue our work into that agency, trying to answer the questions that still remain about the agency's financing and contracting processes. We're also working on the Turnpike Authority audit, and this audit still has several months to go before it is complete, so stay tuned for those results. Now again, as I mentioned, I am running for state auditor. The current state auditor, Auditor Cindy Bryd, is termed out in her position. Now, I'm stepping forward to continue to shine a light on waste, abuse, and inefficiencies to ensure our state government remains transparent, accountable, and responsible with every public dollar. With a degree in finance and a certification as a certified fraud examiner, I've built both the technical foundation and the investigative skill set that is needed to safeguard public funds. This isn't just a campaign to me. It is a continuation of the work that I've dedicated my career to, building systems of accountability, mentoring audit teams, and strengthening public trust. I've seen firsthand what works and where we must do better. Now, I'm a fourth-generation Oklahoman, and I love Oklahoma. I live in the cloud with my husband of 29 years, and we are the proud parents of 3 boys. And as a parent, I want my family and yours to grow up trusting that public institutions truly are about serving the people. Now, taxpayers deserve someone with both experience and courage to ask the tough questions, follow the facts, and deliver the results. That is exactly what I've done throughout my career and what I will continue to do as your state auditor. I would appreciate your support in 2026. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
I'll go first, I guess. How would you handle an audit that reveals systematic problems requiring legislative or executive action to resolve?
So we are a reporting agency, and we provide recommendations in our audit reports. And once our reports are written and with those recommendations, then it is up to those who are in that position to modifying the law or changing the law. And we're always open for them to come have discussions about our thoughts on those audits.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see where some people was concerned about people not being prosecuted, and that's not your job.
It's not our lane.
No, you give the referrals, and they're the ones that make that decision.
That's correct.
What will be your top priorities in your first year as a state auditor?
So my top priorities will be to, I want to increase our staff. We have some areas that I feel like we need to increase our staff. We also have, individuals that are probably going to be retiring. So really, first and foremost, is for me to get staff in and make sure that we can upkeep the work that we have, because our work is not slowing down.
Gotcha. If anybody else got a question, I got more, but raise your hand. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You brought up Swabies. They're having trouble now with the state prosecution. Another investigation.
So it is not currently an investigation within our office, and I know that most recently they reestablished the contract with that current operator.
So it's not the same type of thing going on?
It's not, no.
Yes, what motivated you to run for state auditor?
That's a great question. So again, like I said, I've been in the office for 25 years, and I know firsthand the importance of the office. And I think a lot of encouragement and a lot of prayer. And I felt called to do it.
Right. That brings on my next question, actually. You obviously identify yourself as a Christian. How do you find your Christian faith playing a role in that job?
I think it's just every day you are praying before work and you're praying after. It takes a lot of, family. It takes family support, which my family wholeheartedly supports me in this adventure. And again, I follow the Lord in everything that I do. So.
Right. Anybody else?
Yes.
How many auditors do you have? Like, we have a group that come to our county,
Yes.
and they come to, I guess, every county in a certain term of years.
They do. We have approximately 120 on staff. Probably 90% of those are auditors. And like you said, they are across the state at different county offices. And then at the Oklahoma City office as well, we have auditors there.
So I know some agencies, they have regular audits, and
Yes.
some are brought on by the governor, if
Right.
I'm understanding that correctly, and what he calls for. Is that a correct?
Yes, we are statutorily required to do a number of audits, and then we also take on those that we receive requests from either the governor or a DA, an agency director. Those are in addition to what we are required to do on a regular basis.
Gotcha. All right. Anybody else? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Let me give you an introduction here real fast. All right, next is going to be Cindy Bryd, is the Oklahoma State Auditor and Inspector. So she's the head honcho. First elected in 2018 as the state's first woman to hold the office, a certified public accountant from Colgate. She has over 25 years of auditing experience in state government. Byrd is known for leading high-profile audits, including the Epic Charter Schools investigation, and has focused her career on transparency and accountability in public spending. She is currently running for lieutenant governor. Make her welcome.
I'm going to adjust this just a little bit. Is that okay?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm in my 50s now, and I have to have things a little bit closer to me. So there we go. Now I can see. Well, thank you. It's great to be here with you today. Is this on? Can you hear it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's great to be here with you. I've had meetings in Tulsa the last 2 days, and I have to tell you, I took my tennis shoes off right as I was walking in to dress back up for the meeting. I've been on my feet for it seems like forever with these meetings, but it's great to be here with you. And I think Melissa did a great job just now. For those interested, I am wholeheartedly endorsing her. I think she's done a great job. I also want to welcome the county group back here. I appreciate the work that you do. I'm proud to stand before you as your state auditor and as your next lieutenant governor. I'm here today because I believe in Oklahoma. I'm a fourth generation Oklahoman. I live right down the road about 60 miles in Colgate with my husband Steve and my entire family. That's where I've lived all my life. My mom was a teacher for 33 years. My dad was a rancher. And, our state is filled with small kids, our small town kids like me. Oklahoma has 463 towns with a population of 2,500 or less. I am proud to say that I'm a rural girl, and I think it's the rural in me that's helped me to stand strong and not back down to the crazy that sometimes happens in our state capital. I attended East Central University in Ada. ECU afforded me a top education, university education nearby home. I helped to pay for my college working nights at a Wrangler jeans factory. And it's true, I don't have any fingerprints left to prove it. But Wrangler was the heartbeat of our small town. At one time, it employed 300 people. When President Clinton signed the NAFTA trade agreement, the Wrangler jeans plant shut down and all of our jobs were moved out of the country. This hurt Colgate. In rural areas, manufacturing provides more jobs and higher earnings than any other trade. In his first term, President Donald Trump ended the NAFTA nightmare, and with his return, it's time for these jobs to return to our communities. Oklahoma is special. We are the heartland of America, and it is personified in our people. Oklahoma has a unique way to carry a small town feel no matter where you are. For the most part, you can strike up with a conversation with an Okie and recognize that we are salt of the earth people. Values are a real thing here. We care for our neighbors and we know right from wrong. Now, that's why people come here, to build a family, a business, a good life, and a home. So why isn't Oklahoma recognized nationally for the greatness that we are? Because when the nation Googles us, they see Oklahoma ranked 49th in education and just as poorly for our healthcare services. Because of these poor rankings, Oklahoma is being overlooked by businesses. If 80% of our expenditures fund healthcare and education, and Oklahoma is ranked near the bottom in outcomes, then something's wrong. I believe that Oklahoma's poor performance is largely due to money management. Waste is preventing more of our tax dollars from reaching its intended purpose. What does government do? It takes your money and it spends it. From boards, trusts, commissions, and agencies, state government has nearly 300 different entities making decisions with your tax dollars. And somehow these decision makers have forgotten to value where these dollars come from and what they are to be used for. When I first became an auditor, I was put in a position to observe farmers, ranchers, single moms, the elderly pay their hard-earned money for property taxes. It burned an impression in my mind that still to this day has made me passionate that every dime collected from the citizenry must be accounted for. Government requires a system and structure that's different than the private sector because government is a stewardship of businesses, or stewardship of services. And guess what? It's all taxpayer funded, which means whether it's state dollars or federal dollars, the spending of money has to be done according to law and every dollar reaching its intended purpose. When there's a problem, it usually means that the money's not being taken care of. For example, regularly I receive concerned citizen complaints because Oklahoma children are not getting the help they need. Simultaneously, the DHS director has asked for a special investigative audit for over $60 million of misspent federal daycare funds. Now, I like to say that auditors were Doge before it was cool to be Doge. The national Doge reports are unfathomable, but when we hear similar reports in our own backyard, it seems unreal. When Doge posted billions of COVID relief funds sent to the states were spent on things like baseball stadiums, I was like, well, in Oklahoma, 2.2 million COVID dollars were used to complete and open a contemporary arts center. The state auditor's office has reported millions in mismanaged COVID relief funds. Doge exposed that FEMA spent millions to house illegals in luxury hotels. Well, did you know that Oklahoma spent $4.3 million in places like the Doubletree in Hilton to house Afghan refugees brought in by Catholic charities? The expenses for the refugees didn't stop at hotel payments. Over $15 million federal dollars that were dedicated for Oklahomans' housing needs have instead funded these resettlement efforts. Doge revealed that federal money has been funneled through NGOs, nonprofits, and religious organizations to finance their network of friends and subsidize their causes. Well, Oklahoma contracted with a nonprofit to administer the emergency rental grant funds. Instead of paying for actual costs incurred, the state made lump sum payments to this nonprofit, which allowed the nonprofit to stockpile in excess of more than $16.5 million, and those dollars are drawing interest. That money could have assisted thousands of eligible Oklahomans with their rent and utility assistance. We alerted the state of the problem when the nonprofit stockpiled around $1.6 million, but nothing was done. The nonprofit also treated themselves to fresh flowers, cookie bouquets, limo rides, and steak dinners on the taxpayer's dime. How did Oklahoma get here? Part of the reason is a lack of financially trained personnel to oversee the finances. And part of the reason is the state is circumventing competitive bidding laws and entering into vaguely written contracts with vendors. And another reason, Oklahoma is outsourcing more of its contracts than the U.S. Department of Defense. For the past 8 years, more of the state's checkbook has been outsourced to private vendors and consultants. This has increased cost, decreased quality of services, and removed recourse for poor or non-performance. In 1 year, the state paid $1.1 million to a consultant to oversee the administration of federal grant dollars. The consultant had never done this type of work before. And since the bidding process was ignored, more qualified firms were not notified of the position. The result of this hire? Millions of mismanaged funds. Money intended to help people was misspent, and the federal government could demand Oklahoma to repay those funds. Even more egregious, the state auditor's office found that no work was actually performed for $718,000 paid to the consultant by the state. And the insanity, after all this corruption, the consultant continued to acquire over $4 million in government contract work. Now, to protect public interest, Oklahoma needs to rein in the outsourcing of government services and return to recruiting and investing and retaining talented government employees. After all, the state auditor's office was one of my first jobs out of college, and now I'm leading the agency that invested in my training. Concerning healthcare, I believe that Oklahoma is ranked in the bottom 5 nationally because of years of financial mismanagement within state agencies tasked to oversee healthcare services. Instead of making investments in public health infrastructure to house specialists and preventive cares for communities like yours, we are paying off mismanaged funds and financial incompetencies. This spring, I received a call from the governor's office that mental health claimed they were short $63 million. Could we take a look into this? Melissa's team led that. In the meantime, the agency was granted a $31 million supplemental by the legislature to make its payments. I had to inform the governor that the new director hired 23 executive positions with salaries making over $100,000 each a year, which created an entirely new level of bureaucracy and caused confusion and chaos amongst the agency employees. And the director neglected to hire a CFO, that's a chief financial officer. Mental health has a budget of $750 million each year. So it was no surprise that the state agency started 2025 with a $5 million deficit. Now, Medicaid costs in Oklahoma are now $10.5 billion a year. Costs skyrocketed after the Medicaid expansion in 2021. As Melissa said, 1 out of 4 Oklahomans are now enrolled in Medicaid. Nationally, DOGE revealed that $100 billion had been paid out to fraudulent enrollments in the Medicaid program. Well, in 2019, the state auditor's office conducted a first of its kind in the nation audit of Medicaid eligibility. And we reported that close to $30 million was paid out on behalf of ineligible recipients, and a projected $1.6 billion was paid out for recipients whose eligibility was never fully determined. Instead of making the audit's recommended eligibility checks, the state expanded Medicaid. And due to our nation's debt crisis, reforms are being made to jointly fund the Medicare and Medicaid programs, where the federal government pays 90% and the state pays 10% to cover Medicaid expansion. That could now grow up to a split of 60-40. The increased responsibility serves as a mandate to Oklahoma to implement the Medicaid audit recommendations, cut waste, find efficiencies in order to avoid raising taxes. When it comes to healthcare, Oklahoma needs a finance doctor. We are in a healthcare crisis and costs are skyrocketing. As Lieutenant Governor, I will assist the next governor with solid financial guidance in order to improve our healthcare outcomes. 50% of Oklahoma's budget is dedicated to education. In my tenure, I've been requested to audit Oklahoma's 2 largest school districts. My personal takeaway is we've tried to fix public education with more programs, more services, more counselors, more technology, but the more has not improved the academic outcomes. It's just added to the rising cost of education. From local, county, state, and federal taxes, Oklahoma received in 2021 $7.6 billion to educate students in K through 12. And then that $7.6 billion was distributed to 546 school districts. Now, even though that's a lot of school districts, something doesn't add up when teachers are having to buy classroom supplies out of their own pocket. The State Department of Education has an operating budget of around $20 million. Meaning that the State Department of Education mainly serves as a highly legislated pass-through of funds to the schools. If the State Department of Education is in charge of only 0.26% of Oklahoma education dollars, that's what it was in 21, where do you think it's most likely that we're going to find fraud, waste, and abuse? It's going to be found at your local levels. Under the tenure of former Superintendent Dr. Deborah Gist, Tulsa Public Schools contracted out $29 million on consultants and $37 million on vendors. That is $66 million taxpayer dollars not going to the teacher and the student in the classroom. My audit team reviewed hundreds of 40, 50, and 100-page contracts. The language contained non-tangible concepts like $5.2 million to strengthen system-level alignment to strategic priorities. $1.2 million for multi-tier wraparound services, $6 million for behavior management. Now, if the auditor can't comprehend from the contract what the vendor is being paid for, how does the taxpayer know what they received for their dollars? Since the TPS's invoices and contracts were so vaguely written, my auditors were forced to review emails and the materials purchased to find some justification for those payments made. Those documents revealed the payments went to private companies, NGOs, nonprofits, and consultants to restructure TPS. In 2016, Dr. Deborah Gist announced that the school resources were to be prioritized on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Over the next 5 years, TPS's choices in the allocation of taxpayer dollars resulted in a dramatic decline of student reading and math scores, marking them well below the state average when our state was already ranked 49th nationally for reading and math performance. Public schools are government schools that receive tax dollars in exchange for services that are to ensure all children learn the necessary skills to be productive citizens. When TPS schools are in academic decline, the taxpayers deserve answers. Citizens in all school districts should be able to easily access online the school financial records, a detailed list of expenditures, and the meeting agendas with votes cast by each governing board member. The more an education community is aware of the finances, the stronger the school will be, and the result, academic goals getting accomplished. Now, just like TPS, the state has paid millions to vendors without competitive bidding. One example, $21 million worth of contracts were paid to one vendor for IT consulting. Because of the obtuse language, the state auditor's office could not determine if the vendor's invoices for payments aligned with what their contract stated. We sought an outside IT expert, and after his review, the state contracts with that vendor were essentially open-ended time and materials contracts until the money ran out. Circumventing the bidding processes leaves taxpayers' funds unprotected. Starting with the pandemic and every year since, more and more competitive bidding laws and policies have been repealed and exemptions added. These eliminations have led to an investigative audit request of the state's procurement and contracting practices. That will be the most impactful audit for the well-being of state government and the most contentious audit of my career. Oklahoma needs a financial reset so that our state is set up for success for years to come. I have experience in doing just that. In 2011, I was promoted as the first female director of county audits. This division oversees the $5 billion that flows through county government each year and services the over 600 elected county officials plus staff. As the new director, the old ways weren't working, and I had to overhaul the entire system. To do that, relationships had to be built with the 8 independently elected county officials in all 77 counties. At first, it was really hard, but after trust was established, we transformed county government accountability. The county director position made a way for me to become the first female state auditor in Oklahoma history, and the first state auditor with over 28 years of government auditing experience who has performed audits across the state. Unfortunately, the state auditor's position is statutorily or constitutionally term limited. My service is going to end in 2027. I've chosen to run for the office of Lieutenant Governor. Because of my unique bird's eye view on the entire financial picture at the city, county, and state levels, I know where Oklahoma needs the crucial financial restructuring. Now, the state auditor's office publishes close to 350 audits each year, filled with recommendations on how to make financial improvements in every area of government. It is time to take these audits off the shelf, incorporate the solutions, and see tangible, positive improvements. Emphasizing that good government is good money management. Now, wouldn't a state auditor make a terrific lieutenant governor? After all, government benefits when an experienced CPA has a seat at the table and the lieutenant governor sits on or presides over the state's most important boards and commissions. To mention a few, the Oklahoma Capital Improvement Authority manages some of our state's largest infrastructure projects. The Commission of the Land Office oversees land and mineral rights that allows for a $3 billion sacred trust fund for education. The State Board of Equalization is responsible to certify the state budget and help make sure that property values that are centrally assessed by tax commission are proper. As state auditor, I've served on these boards with the lieutenant governor. And even though I work with complicated numbers every day, I was daunted by the amount of information that's presented at these meetings. I take these board positions very seriously. I requested my briefing a week earlier just to research the material. I required supporting documentation, and I've lost count how many times I've had to say, just because this action is allowed doesn't make it right. Most notably, the Lieutenant Governor serves as chairman of the Oklahoma Tourism and Recreation Commission. Now, unfortunately, tourism has had 2 short-lived executive directors, mainly due to circumventing the bidding process and entering into faulty contracts. Yet legislators still filed bills to eliminate competitive bidding requirements for that agency. For all the government contracts overseen by the Lieutenant Governor, I will ensure that the competitive bidding process is followed. Now, Oklahoma is grateful for our current Lieutenant Governor, Matt Pinnell. Who doesn't love him? I think the world of him. He's promoted the state of Oklahoma with love and excitement, and he's found ways to outshine Texas, which is important. Living in Colgate, we live not far from the Texas border, and we don't appreciate the Texas land grab of Oklahoma acres for their weekend fishing and hunting trips. Steve, my husband, is an avid fisherman and loves participating in Oklahoma's fishing trail on our beautiful lakes. And guys, I'm not all balance sheets and numbers. When we can, my mom and I love to hike and bike our state parks down in southeastern Oklahoma. But we are also surrounded by some of Oklahoma's most talented musicians. However, our artists here are leaving our state to go to Nashville and LA to be seen and heard. The Lieutenant Governor serves on the Oklahoma Music Advisory Commission. I'm excited about utilizing that role to help Oklahoma showcase our own talent and in turn help benefit Oklahoma's economy. Currently, 32 Oklahoma Hall of Famers and Grammy Award winners have joined my team for Cindy Bryd for Lieutenant Governor. So usually when you come to my campaign events, you're not going to have to sit and stare at a donation box. These people are singing and getting excited and telling you to back Byrd for Lieutenant Governor. Now then, the primary reason a lieutenant governor is appointed to serve on several boards and commissions is for the purpose of guiding the state towards economic success. Oklahomans deserve a lieutenant governor with 30 years of government financial oversight, accountability, and management who fights for the people who pay the bills. The lieutenant governor serves as the president of the Oklahoma Senate, casting a vote in the event of the tie. Now, whenever I was working with 8 individually elected officials in all 77 counties to improve our financial reporting process, it's like herding cats sometimes. Well, working with state senators, Senator Logan, it's a whole different breed. But I can work with anyone to create positive change. I've worked with senators on a variety of topics and found it's one thing to pass laws, but it's a whole other ballgame to successfully implement them. I've seen conservative ideas enacted without proper financial safeguards and properly trained individuals, which led to failed programs and wasted funding. Take Epic Charter Schools. It was the first of its kind virtual charter school. The design allowed for the parent and student to make curriculum choices and participate in local sportings and art activities. But its design allowed for a private company to take advantage of the school and our tax dollars to the tune of the largest abuse of taxpayer funds in the history of the state. The Epic Charter School audit was never about the school. I should have renamed the report how a company took over the school's checkbook. The problem was the private company that the school hired to help with management. The company paid themselves for work that was being done by public school employees. The private company swept $200 million taxpayer dollars into their private accounts that was intended for student learning. The private company weaponized those dollars against anyone that questioned their decision-making. Before the ink was even dry on the audit report, conservative bloggers had already painted me the enemy of school choice, and the company's political control froze the legislature from acting, and it resulted in them pocketing $80 million more. But I stood by our findings and withstood the company's hired attorneys and propaganda campaign. In the end, liars will figure, but figures never lie. The company owners and their CFO were arrested and charged with 15 criminal counts. The charges included racketeering, embezzlement of state funds, submitting false documents to the state, and money laundering. The conservative bloggers missed the opportunity to showcase the best part of the story. When the private company was removed and the school incorporated our audit recommendations, Epic Charter saw an immediate savings of $30 million that year to invest back into the students. But that's always been my heart, for the audit to be a tool to make improvements for better outcomes. I want school choice opportunities for students across the state of Oklahoma. And I want conservative ideas to be successful because they are coupled with a sound financial plan. The company should be facing trial soon. I'm not really sure what that delay is about. Now, the CFO accepted a plea bargain that would guarantee him no prison time in exchange for his testimony. He confessed that the company used tax dollars marked for student learning to make political donations to take down anyone who questioned the company. The company placed over $1.5 million in PACs and a 501c4 dark money account to ensure that I would lose the 2022 re-election campaign. And even though charges have been filed and the trial is still pending, the company maintains a large war chest and their vengeance remains strong. To date, I've raised almost double the amount of money I raised in my first campaign. In both of my elections, I've been outspent 6-1, but I've won with the highest vote count in 2018 and by the highest margin of any statewide or federal candidate in 2022. I'm really the horse to bet on. Now, it's not easy to shine the light of truth. Things that were meant to stay in the shadows get exposed. My life radically changed on October 1st of 2020 when I held a press conference and showed the public and lead decision makers that millions of education dollars had been misappropriated. And the response was avoidance, ridicule, lies by my own party and previous conservative supporters. I'm grateful for the Epic audit experience because it built in me a resolve and a stronger faith in God. And I can honestly stand before you and say, I've been tried, tested, and proven that I will always do what is best for the citizens of Oklahoma over political pressure or personal gain. Finally, the most important reason why I choose to run for Lieutenant Governor. My years of experience and expertise is a necessary asset to the next governor. And here's why that's so important. President Trump has made it clear that he is radically reducing the federal government, which means states are being called up to take on more of the financial responsibility for healthcare, education, and human services, as constitutionally we should have always done. To handle this financial shift, we're going to have to root out the wasteful spending and abuse of funds, prioritize resources to avoid tax increases, and improve the delivery of services to you, the taxpayer. As a licensed CPA and state auditor, I know a thing or two about how to do that. The best way for me to champion Oklahoma is to change our outcomes. $35 billion flows through state government each year. I know the laws that govern our funding streams. I know the inner workings of government. I know where the needs improvement signs are, and I know how to streamline our resources. As we transition out of the dark days into the golden age, as President Trump has coined it, I will ensure that Oklahoma is financially repositioned to not be overlooked. When government functions as it was designed, then it is a service to the people and it's not a burden to their checkbook. As conservatives, fiscal responsibility has to remain our cornerstone. We must be a people who believe and follow our God-centered founding principles: limited government, low taxes, and protection of life and liberty. We are going to turn this page and our best days are ahead. It's been an honor to serve as your state auditor. My administration is finishing strong, and we will leave Oklahoma more transparent and accountable to the taxpayer. I want to say thank you for your vote for Lieutenant Governor, and remember that Byrd is the word. Now give me your best questions.
First question, did you bring a sign?
I will get those for you, but I need to make sure I have your phone number too.
I just want to
Thank you.
say that I began serving as county treasurer under Gary,
and I was there when Cindy campaigned, and she did implement a uniform reporting system that has virtually changed how we function. As far as the State Department of Education, I wanted to point out to you that, in case you don't know this, 70% of your ad valorem tax goes to your local school district. So it's personal, not just at a state level, but at a county level. And a lot of people don't understand that when they come into the office and they want to know what their tax dollars are going for. They're going to schools. And I mean, we're actually going through a 3-year audit right now. But one thing I know is we're not afraid to go ask questions of the auditor's office because they're on our side. You know, we're working hard to safeguard the county's money, and we want to be accountable, and they support us in that 100%. And so you have a mindful support, if that means anything to anybody, but having worked with Cindy for the last 8 years, she's honest, and she is for us. She is, you know, they're not looking, the auditor's office, sometimes people get really like, oh, the auditors are here. But they're not here to bring us down, they're here to support us and to help us to do our jobs better. And I'm very thankful for everything Cindy's done, so, vote for Bird's word.
Thank you very much for that support. It is the role of the auditor is not to play gotcha. It is to go and meet the people there, help them do their job better. If they don't know what the law is, explain it. And that's what I've spent my career doing. And I would say that county government is so important to me because it's where the rubber meets the road, as Gene Wallace used to say. And that's where people are most accountable and do the best job directly for you.
Anybody else?
I have a question. About getting into politics, no, I don't know what that is.
So what is the role of OEMS as far as all this contracting and budgeting, and can you give us a
Yes. So what you just heard me talk about with the contracting out to the consultants, yes, that was my biggest concern. So prior to COVID, we were spending around $7 billion a year in federal expenditures, federal grant funds. And after COVID, that number went up to $14 billion. And when a lot of money comes into the state, well, I mean, quite frankly, the state wasn't prepared to handle that big increase of funds. And what we saw were more and more funds or contracts were given out without properly bidding them to make sure we weren't paying more than what we should have, or to even make sure that we were getting what we paid for. So that was the concern that I took to get a request for the contracting and procurement processes at OMES. We're working on that. And you know, whenever you start looking at payments made to vendors, you know, you get attacked. People don't like it whenever you start questioning taxpayer funds paid out to vendors, but you'll see a lot of that. And I'm going to stand strong. And if there weren't proper competitive bidding procedures applied, or if we were paying too much, you're going to get it in a report. That report is on the list. We have an enormous workload in the auditor's office, and we've not been properly funded. We've not had the auditors to do the job. And with COVID, it created an additional situation where the private market has stolen a lot of our auditors for higher wages. And so it's just, it's always crisis management in the auditor's office. We are trying to get our audits completed, but until we can find a lot more auditors, we can't speed up that process.
So similar to Melissa asked a question about her faith and how it plays a role, you know, in everyday duties. How does that play a role for you?
I would say my faith is the only thing that has carried me through the last 6 or 7 years. I entered that Capitol building wanting to help, thinking and believing that anyone would want to know about waste, fraud, and abuse and work to get it corrected. And that was not the case. And whenever we released the audit of Epic Charter Schools, I had the documentation and I had the proof, and no one listened. My own party turned against me. Friends that I had in the Capitol no longer spoke to me for fear that they would be held accountable for talking to the auditor. If it hadn't been for my faith in God during that time, I couldn't have made it. I was able to go back home. My mom and I walk at the park in Colgate on mornings when I'm there about 4:45, and I would walk with her. She would pray with me. That's how I got through that. I knew who I was, but my faith in God is what carried me through it.
In what areas do you think the state government is least transparent, and what would you do to address that?
Well, anyone who has followed my reports or what I've said publicly, I've said it's in the contracting. We've got to make sure that, government shouldn't get in the way of business. We should let free market principles rule in this state. Free market principles mean that when government needs something, they should put it out to bid and let the best vendor with the best product and best price be awarded with a contract. When I started talking about the state of Oklahoma circumventing bidding procedures, that's what I'm saying. We don't know if we're paying twice the amount we would have to pay when we don't bid it and we don't give everyone an opportunity. So I don't think there was very much transparency and accountability in that. That's where I'd say the biggest problem is.
What is the greatest challenge, which you talked about some of these, but facing the state right now, what could be your role in addressing it?
The existential crisis, not just in this state, but in the nation right now, is the funding of Medicaid. That is the looming monster on the hill that we are going to have to tackle. And while we want Medicaid to be viable and solvent for those who qualify and need it, if we don't get the procedures in place to make sure we're not paying funds for illegal immigrants or people who are gaming the system, it's not going to be there. We've got to contract, make sure we're only paying it to the qualified people, and clean that up. That way we're not having to raise taxes when we can't afford to pay our bills.
What did you wish you could have accomplished in the auditor's office but couldn't, and why?
Well, I kind of feel like COVID ran away with the office because for 2 years it was very hard to conduct audits because you couldn't interview people. An auditor can't just interview over the phone. You've got to be across the table from someone asking the hard questions, really getting to the bottom. So that was one thing that slowed things down. If I would have said I wanted to accomplish something, I wanted to be able to work lockstep with the legislature so that whenever I found problems, they could have immediately been addressed and it could have saved you, the taxpayer, lots of money.
Anybody else?
I want to say one more thing at the local level, since that's where we are right here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when you took office, we were a couple of years behind on audits. And I believe when you leave office, we'll be caught up. Is that correct?
That is correct. So let me go back even farther than that. Back in 2011, this is going to be in the weeds, so you guys bear with me. Remember the Enron debacle? Remember when Enron collapsed? Arthur Anderson, the auditors weren't doing their jobs. Auditing standards changed. And at that point, it said the auditor can't prepare your financial statements and audit them. And that all hit in 2008. And our rural counties, that's about at least 70 of them, couldn't prepare financial statements. You didn't have the training, you didn't know how. And so all of a sudden, those auditing standards went into effect, and county government wasn't able to prepare financial statements for the auditors to then come in and do the audit. Some of those audits got 5 years behind because the auditors couldn't do anything without a set of financial statements. So whenever Gary Jones was elected state auditor, my first job was to go fix the situation. I wasn't really given clear direction. It was just go fix that situation. So the first thing I did was I went and this was my first speaking engagement, I think, ever. And I was required to get up in front of almost 800 people who had come to see what the auditor was going to change and how it was going to disrupt their life. And I remember looking at Gary Jones and thinking, I really want this job, but I really don't like to speak in public. So I got up there and I told them what the changes had to be, and it was really hard. But the one thing I did is I gave them my cell phone number, and I said, you're not going to have to do it alone because I'm going to help you fix it, and I'm going to answer the phone when you call. And that's how we turned it around in the 70 plus states, or 70 plus counties, because some of them, again, were able to do it. And I built that trust across the state that not only would I give directions, but I would stay there and help get the problems fixed. And that has been at my heart. That's been at my heart as an auditor. That will be my heart as lieutenant governor. Fix the problems in the state so that state government at all levels works for you.
Anybody else?
I got another question as far as campaign. What is your goal fundraising and how has it changed for run for auditor versus lieutenant governor?
Okay. Senator Logan, whenever I started running for auditor, people would say, "We have an auditor?" Now then, whenever I run for lieutenant governor, I will call people I don't know, because you've got to make phone calls and ask for money, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I know you. You're doing a good job." I'm like, "Okay, let's invest in me then." So the fundraising is much different for lieutenant governor than it was for auditor. So keep that in mind whenever you guys are thinking about Melissa, because she's going to need all the help she can get.
She had a question there. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, you were talking about your auditor at heart. We can tell, as you kind of on this new time for you, this new dream that you want to have. Do you have a personal goal that you want? I know you want to help everyone in the state, and we're here in a small county. Okfuskee County is one of the smallest counties in the state, one of the poorest.
Yes.
And so we look at our leaders to help us with business, and we're on I-40, we get overlooked, and we have famous people here. I mean, we got three, of course. You see the signs and you hear the songs and you hear them talk about Okima, but you see the things in Tulsa, and we have several, draws. You're in it for us small counties. Remember us when it comes to opportunities and just hardworking people that are trying to make a living and trying to keep our kids here, because we're losing our kids to different states. Pipeline is a big thing here. Get on the pipeline, make the big bucks. We want to keep our families together, keep them here, have good jobs. American dream, but for Okfuskee County, I think have a little remembrance of us, and as far as I know, you can't help every county in the state, but wouldn't that be amazing if as a group we could be in with some sort of big dream or big something,
Yes, and I think that's beautiful. I think that your county has a lot to offer here, and you are right on I-40, and you could be part of the music industry plan that I will lay out at some point in the future. But I also want to tell you, if I can take just a couple of minutes, because this is important, and this is something you're all going to want to understand here. I am rural. I told you I lived in Cole County. It too is a very poor county where every penny counts, which is probably what's made me so passionate about not wasting money. But one of the problems that I've seen that I'm going to see through before I leave the Office of State Auditor is the fact that your county jails are so expensive. And one of the things that came to my attention is that the Department of Corrections was leaving their inmates in county jails for an extended period of time and paying them pennies on the dollar for what they should have been paying. During COVID, DA Steve Kunzweiler from Tulsa sent me a request, and it was in the law, where I would recalculate the daily incarceration rate if a sheriff and DOC couldn't agree on that. Well, DOC, I think, was is it 27 or is it 32 they're paying now? I'm not sure. That's how much it is per day. Whenever we calculated Tulsa's, the actual cost, it was more like $58 a day. Did you know that our state constitution says that no tax levied at the local level shall be used to subsidize a state purpose? Meaning, DOC can't force you to house their prisoners and incur the cost that they are responsible for paying. And guess what funds your county jails? It is your property taxes. So that's something that after I did the calculation for DA Kunzweiler and gave them that, DOC immediately sued me. And I relish the thought for my day in court where I will vigorously defend my calculation and fight for small counties like yours and mine that can't afford to subsidize state cost. So that's how much small counties mean to me.
This wasn't really on the agenda, but I thought we'd give Shelton Foster just a few minutes. He's running for office, and just